Hey, what up, though? So, I'm trying to sit here and do this little YouTube thing, just a little hobby. So let's sit here and have a little chat about things I like. Sit here and kind of see what hits. So let's sit here and kind of start by talking about romance in Hollywood. New trailer came out for this film, Wuthering Heights, and it's just kind of more the same garbage. And I bet y'all wondering, like, what's a man sitting there doing talking about romance? I like romance. I enjoy romance. I enjoy the game of cat and mouse. But, I see romance the same way that, women see a lot of nerdy stuff. I like it. But unlike women, I would never sit here and kind of stand out in the cold for hours waiting for the midnight premiere to show up. Like, I'm not doing that for romance. Kind of the same way when it comes to, girls and a lot of nerdy stuff. They'll sit here and there's some girls, yeah, they're into that, but most girls, they're not going to sit here and stand out in the blistering cold for a Marvel flick. But I do like romance. So this new film, Wuthering Heights, is coming out, and this is not what anybody asked for. Nobody asked for that. Nobody wants it. We want kind of a return to form of just, a man and woman actually in love. And Hollywood does not do that. And Wuthering Heights is just the definition of smut, and we know why they're doing this. They're specifically doing this because they're trying to resurrect that old school Twilight, 50 Shades of Grey energy to sit here and turn it into like $1 billion franchise and branch it off and create a universe, and it's just not going to work. And that's because it's built off of the principle and the concept of lust, and lust just isn't a story structure that can go past one, maybe two. The sequels suck, maybe two movies, and we don't do those one and done films no more. We don't do that no more. Everything is shared universe. Everything is extended universe. Everything has to sequelize. And the problem with something like Wuthering Heights is, where the hell you gonna take that shit? Like what you gonna do? What y'all gonna ride off into the moon, into the sunset together? She a cheating ass bitch, and he a low life scumbag that be sitting here popping Mary chicks. Like, how y'all gonna build trust? How y'all gonna build understanding? How's that really gonna work? It's two people trying to get laid, and it's just, every now and again you're gonna sit here and have an exception, but an exception just proves rule. An exception like American Pie, or Bridget Jones' Diary. Sure, you're going to have exceptions, but the vast majority of these, that's just not going to be the case. And Wuthering Heights is definitely going to be one of those films that it's going to do okay, I guess, but it's just not going to build into this multi-million-dollar franchise like I think some people in Hollywood think it's going to do, or perhaps more realistically. They're probably expecting Wuthering Heights to just be the start of romance being another potential cash cow in Hollywood, because romance hasn't done anything like in years. Like, romance haven't made like a serious splash in years. I think, like, if we're talking about the last real romance film, like the last real romance film, man, like last real romance film that made money, you go into The Notebook. Shit, wasn't The Notebook like in the 90s, like in or in the double O's? I think it was the 90s. Like, that was kind of like the last, like, box office cracking romance joint that really, and I'm talking about, like, and by romance I mean, and they lived happily ever after. If it don't end like that, then you're not really a romance. You're not really romance. It lived happily ever after, or I mean, you know, we sit here and count Titanic in there, even though they didn't live happily ever after, but we count Titanic in there because Rose did all right. Rose had a full damn life with kids and all types of shit. And Rose did okay. But well, we can sit here and start this conversation about romance by sitting here kind of starting like where romance really went downhill, and that really started with Twilight. Twilight started a lot of the problems we see in romance because Twilight set the bar for what romance should be, despite the fact that where people blame Twilight for the fall of romance, we have to put that in proper context that Twilight isn't really a love story. It's more of an action flick than it is an actual love story. It's just like it's no different than sitting here, I don't know, getting the X-Men movie where all the X-Men characters just fall in love. That's just it doesn't make it a romance movie. It just makes it an action flick with a heavy emphasis on romance, and that's all Twilight ever was. And Twilight follows the typical structure of an action flick. It's not really a romance movie. But Twilight kind of started this with its strange marketing to where people just assume that, you know, oh, well, Twilight shows that romance films can hit $1 billion. And that kind of is like the first problem that I think we're going to have with fixing romance. And that's this expectation that big budget romance is just going to be that $1 billion cash cow that's just going to sit here and pull in Avatar-like numbers. This isn't like saying that's impossible, but this is saying that that's just not a realistic standard for everybody to be aiming for. Because, you know, what the Twilight stuff started was, it started that fake, you know, action romance thing that went off to, you know, the Hunger Games. And you know, we don't think of the Hunger Games as a romance story, but it definitely was marketed as something, two girls with a heavy emphasis of its romance themes. And I like Katniss as an action character, but as a romantic love interest, I mean, I like, what's her name who played Katniss? I can't remember her name right now. I probably put it in the description somewhere. I like, what's her name played Katniss? I thought she was sexy, she was fine, but you know, past that, like Katniss as a character itself, I wasn't on online looking for Rule 34 Katniss Everdeen. That's I just wasn't. but the final straw that kind of really killed big budget romance was 50 Shades of Grey. 50 Shades of Grey was an epic failure because 50 Shades of Grey showed us kind of the limitations of this lust-based, you know, storytelling structure. And that is 50 Shades of Grey was nothing but domination, was nothing but rich man domination. And it kind of showed why, it kind of really spelled out why romance in Hollywood has just been an absolute and total failure up until this point. And that is, you sitting here, you're not building characters right. Christian Grey was the worst male character I have ever fucking seen. He was the most dry, not interesting, boring. He wasn't funny. He wasn't charming. He wasn't witty. Wasn't interesting. Had no depth of character, none at all. And what's her? What the fuck was her name? And I don't even remember her name. That's how fucking terrible she was, the character. It was bad. It was dry. I mean, now in the book, don't get me wrong. Now, the sex scenes were fire. They were that good. Yes, they were. I will give that to E.L. James. Like, her sex scenes were fucking. They were so fire. It is. I mean, because it was graphic enough to where you got the picture. She didn't sit here and really just, try to jam it in there. She sat here and really, she drew the picture with simple words. We were like, what? But, that sat here and really highlighted kind of just the weakness of the bad boy trope. Now, look here. When it comes to tropes, I like tropes. I respect tropes because tropes work if you do them correctly. And that is, when it comes to the tropes, either A, you have to make sure that the trope ends on a positive note, or it has to end with a teachable lesson attached to it, where we sit here understand that either we're learning how to replicate this, or we're learning how to avoid it. And when it comes to the bad boy trope, the problem I have with the bad boy trope is that, one, a lot of the girl characters, they don't really love these bad boys. They just don't. They're not that fucking into them. They're not. Sexy, sure. Attractive, why not? Definitely, okay, yeah, get you humming a little bit. But I just don't really think girls mess with the bad boy besides like, oh, he's cute. And because of that, they kind of rest on the bad boy trope, sexy appeal, without actually turning them into real characters. And the bad boy trope has kind of just become this caricature that if we're going to sit here and talk about bad boy trope done right, Me Being Black, loving basketball. That dude was an asshole. He was a whole asshole, but it worked. He had care. But it worked. The whole thing worked. And, and that's kind of like the number one example that comes to my mind, because I'm not sitting here doing no 12-hour video here. But, this entire thing of trying to work the bad boy trope, and not just the bad boy trope, but the other tropes as well. Enemies to lovers. We ain't had a good enemies to lovers in a long time. We ain't had a good struggle love in a long time. Like, they don't even want to touch struggle love. They sat here and try to touch that in Materialist, and we still don't necessarily know how to feel about that one. Like, Hollywood just really doesn't know what they want to do with love. And that's because they're not really portraying love. What they're portraying is lust. And they're trying to sit here and say, okay, well, it's a little bit, it look a lot like lust, but it's not really lust. It's really love. Nah, come on, man. Come on, I'm sorry. Like, when it came, it started with 50 Shades of Grey. Like, if you take away Christian Grey's Billions, what are we talking about? If you take away Edward Cullen's money and vampire powers and Twilight, what are we talking about? If we say, and you can just kind of do that, like a lot of the romance stuff, one, the girl characters really have been born, but I see these movies primarily from the male side, and none of these female characters have really had any help whatsoever. They've had no help in the script, in the book whatsoever. They've had zero help. None of these dudes was pulling any weight whatsoever at all. None of these dudes are a Darcy. They're not. They're just not. But that's all I gotta sit here and say about it. Take care, everybody. Peace.